You have been bleeding power your entire life, and you never even noticed the wound. Every time you rush to reply to a message that didn't deserve your time, every time you explain yourself to someone already committed to misunderstanding you, every time you defend your choices against a snide comment or passive-aggressive jab, you hand over a piece of yourself. You surrender control of your emotions. You give away the most expensive currency you own, your attention. And the worst part? The people you're spending it on wouldn't cross the street to help you if you were bleeding out on the sidewalk. This is the brutal truth most people never learn, and the ones who do become untouchable. Powerful men and women never forget it. Your attention is not free. It is finite. It is sacred. And you have been pouring it into people, arguments, and dramas that return nothing but noise. The ancient Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. They didn't call it dark psychology. They called it discipline. They called it freedom. They called it living according to nature and reason, instead of reacting like a puppet. Epictetus put it plainly: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius lived it. He ruled an empire, faced betrayal, slander, and endless criticism, and still chose silence over explanation, indifference over outrage. The Stoics didn't chase validation. They didn't beg for understanding. They didn't waste breath on people who weren't worth the air it took to speak. They mastered the ruthless art of ignoring, and in doing so, they became magnetic, feared, and free. Tonight, you learn the same art, not as a petty game, not as cruelty for the sake of cruelty, but as the coldest, most calculated form of self-sovereignty. This is the Stoic psychology of strategic silence. This is how you stop bleeding power and start owning it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 7 iron principles, 7 psychological and philosophical weapons forged in Stoic wisdom that will teach you exactly when, why, and how to ignore people so completely that they lose their grip on you forever. Number 4 is the one most people fail at hardest. It's the moment they keep reacting to critics and energy vampires and wonder why they feel smaller every day. If you're tired of being pulled into every petty drama, tired of explaining yourself to people who don't deserve the courtesy, tired of waking up already exhausted from yesterday's pointless arguments, then stay with me. Because once you understand and apply these 7 principles, no one will ever control your peace again. No one will ever drag you down to their level again. And the moment you stop reacting is the moment the world starts adjusting to you. Let's begin. Principle 1. The philosophy of silence. Why Stoics never chase. Most people believe that silence means surrender. That if you don't respond, you lose ground. That if you don't explain yourself, you appear weak or defeated. So they chase the last word, chase validation, chase the illusion of control. And in doing so, they quietly hand their power away. Stoicism begins by dismantling this instinct. The Stoic understands that chasing is not strength. Chasing is evidence of dependence. The moment you feel compelled to respond, to correct, to defend, you have already allowed something external to dictate your inner state. You are no longer acting from choice, but from provocation. This is why Stoics never chase not people, not arguments, not approval. Silence, for the Stoic, is not a tactic. It is a position. It is the refusal to be pulled out of oneself. Epictetus taught that while events and other people lie outside our control, our judgments do not. Chasing is nothing more than a judgment that something external deserves authority over your attention. Silence is the opposite judgment. It says, "This does not govern me." When you remain silent in the face of provocation, something subtle but powerful happens. You interrupt the expected pattern. Most social interactions are scripted. Insult expects defense. Criticism expects justification. Accusation expects explanation. Silence breaks the script entirely. And when the script breaks, control shifts. This is why silence feels so uncomfortable at first. It goes against social conditioning. You were trained to believe that being heard equals being valued. That visibility equals importance. That response equals relevance. Stoicism cuts through this illusion with precision. It asks, if your value depends on reaction, was it ever stable to begin with? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that peace comes from choosing not to feel harmed. Silence is how that choice becomes visible, not by suppression, but by restraint. You are not denying emotion. You are refusing to let emotion drive your behavior. There is also a hidden psychological effect at work. When you chase, you communicate need. When you remain silent, you communicate self-sufficiency. People are drawn to what does not seek them. Silence creates gravity because it signals that your inner world is already occupied. This is not mysticism. It is human psychology. The Stoic is not silent to appear powerful. The Stoic is powerful because silence protects energy. Attention scattered is power diluted. Attention conserved is power accumulated. Seneca warned that much of life is wasted on anxiety and unnecessary engagement. Silence is subtraction. It removes friction. It removes excess. It leaves only what matters. But there is an important warning here. Stoic silence is not performative. It is not withdrawal meant to provoke pursuit. If you are silent while secretly craving reaction, you are still chasing, just indirectly. True Stoic silence is clean. It carries no expectation. When practiced honestly, silence does something profound. It reveals how much of your suffering came not from others, but from your compulsion to engage with them. And once that compulsion weakens, a new kind of strength emerges, quiet, grounded, and difficult to disturb. Silence is not the absence of action. It is action disciplined. And this is why Stoics never chase. If this idea is already settling into your bones, drop a comment below with the words, "Silence is power." Let it be the first marker that you're done chasing. Now, let's go deeper into what actually happens inside someone's mind when you choose silence instead of reaction. Principle 2. The psychology of being ignored. What happens in their mind? One of the most common mistakes people make is responding for closure. They reply to feel complete. They explain so the tension will dissolve. They engage because silence feels unfinished. But in doing so, they unknowingly transfer power to the very person or situation disturbing them. Closure is often just disguised dependence. When you respond in order to feel better, you are allowing someone else's behavior to dictate your emotional state. You are teaching them that access to you is guaranteed, that your attention can be summoned, that your inner balance is negotiable. From a Stoic perspective, this is not resolution, it is surrender. Ignoring changes the psychology entirely. Human beings are wired to seek feedback. When action meets response, the loop closes. But when action meets silence, the mind begins to spiral. The absence of response creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable. Modern psychology shows that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The mind reacts as if something vital has been withdrawn. This is not cruelty. It is biology. When you ignore someone who expects engagement, their attention turns inward. They replay the interaction. They search for meaning. They question their position. And while they are doing this, you are no longer involved. Their mental energy is spent without costing you anything. This is where people misunderstand Stoic psychology. The goal is not to cause obsession. The obsession is a side effect of your withdrawal, not the intention The real purpose of ignoring is freedom. Freedom from emotional labor, from justification, from the need to manage how others feel about you. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Ignoring is how that choice is practiced. You are not denying that something happened. You are denying it authority over your mind. Most conflicts survive on mutual participation. Arguments require two people. Drama needs an audience. Manipulation needs reaction. When you ignore, you remove the second half of the equation. The interaction collapses under its own weight, and something important happens to you as well. You begin to notice how much of your attention was being spent managing others' emotions. How often you were reacting not because it was necessary, but because it was habitual. Ignoring breaks that habit. It returns time, clarity, and energy back to you. This is why ignoring feels so powerful. Not because the other person is disturbed, but because you are no longer disturbed. However, this principle comes with a serious warning. Ignoring becomes corrosive when it is used as a weapon. If your silence is designed to punish, provoke, or manipulate, you are still psychologically entangled. You are still reacting just more quietly. Stoic ignoring is not strategic cruelty. It is strategic non-participation. You ignore not to control their emotions, but to stop being controlled by them. You ignore not to win a psychological game, but to step out of the game entirely. The moment your silence depends on their reaction, it loses its purity. When practiced correctly, this principle creates a quiet imbalance. They may replay the interaction again and again, searching for answers. You move on. They may obsess. You regain focus. No effort, no confrontation, no explanation. This is the ruthless elegance of Stoic psychology. They carry the noise. You carry the peace, and peace, once reclaimed, is the greatest form of power. If you've ever felt that shift when someone suddenly stops getting a rise out of you, drop a quick comment below with "The void wins," so we know you're seeing it. Next, we move to the practical side, how to disappear emotionally without ever leaving the room. Principle 3, the art of strategic withdrawal, how to disappear without leaving. Most people think being ignored only happens when someone is physically absent, ghosting texts, leaving group chats, walking out of a room. They treat withdrawal like an all-or-nothing act. Either you're fully there, giving everything, or you're completely gone. That binary thinking is exactly why most people stay weak and predictable. The Stoics mastered something far more powerful: strategic withdrawal while still being present. Seneca wrote it clearly in one of his letters: "Withdraw into yourself as far as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. He wasn't telling us to become hermits. He was teaching us to create an inner distance, an emotional and mental boundary that no one can cross without permission. Here's what that looks like in real life. You're at a family gathering. A relative starts their usual pattern, complaining about politics, criticizing your career choices, fishing for an argument they can win. In the past, you would have jumped in, defended your path, corrected their facts, tried to change their mind. You'd leave the table drained, replaying the conversation for hours. Now you do something different. You stay seated. You nod politely if necessary. You even smile faintly. But your energy is elsewhere. You don't engage. You don't defend. You don't explain. Your face remains calm. Your voice, if you speak at all, is neutral and brief. You have physically not left the room, but you have completely withdrawn your inner presence. What happens? The relative keeps talking, but the fuel is gone. Arguments need two people feeding them. Drama needs a reaction to stay alive. When you refuse to supply that reaction, the fire burns out faster. They may get louder for a minute, trying to provoke you back in, but eventually they move on to someone else who will give them the attention they crave. You, meanwhile, have preserved your peace. You have not wasted mental energy. You have not let their noise rent space in your head for the rest of the day. This is the art. Being in the world, but not of it. You answer the phone when it matters, but you let unimportant calls go to voicemail without guilt. You reply to messages that serve a purpose, but you leave the petty ones on read. You attend the meeting, but you don't volunteer for every side conversation or drama. You are physically available when it aligns with your values and emotionally unreachable the rest of the time. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every day in the imperial palace, surrounded by schemers, flatterers, and opportunists. He wrote to himself, "Stop drifting. You're not going to read your own notebooks. You won't be a different man before you're dead. How much longer are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" Strategic withdrawal is that demand. It is not running away. It is choosing where your presence goes, and more importantly, where it does not. The less you scatter yourself, the more valuable the pieces become. The more selective you are with your attention, the more magnetic your presence feels when you do choose to give it. You are not disappearing. You are ascending. And from that higher ground, the noise below starts to sound very small. If you've already started noticing how much energy you waste being available to everyone, drop a quick comment with, "I'm withdrawing," so we know the shift is happening. Next, we get surgical, who actually deserves your silence, and who deserves even less than that. Principle 4. Enemies, critics, and noise. Who deserves your silence? There is a quiet mistake that costs people more power than any insult ever could. Responding to those who never deserved attention in the first place. Enemies, critics, habitual complainers, and emotional parasites all rely on the same mechanism. They need your awareness to exist meaningfully in your world. The moment you respond, explain, defend, or retaliate, you elevate them. You take something insignificant and give it weight. Stoicism treats this as a fundamental error of judgment. Not every voice is a signal. Most are noise. And noise only becomes disruptive when you decide to listen. The Stoic does not ask, "Am I right?" or "Should I correct them?" The Stoic asks a colder, more decisive question. Does this deserve space in my mind? If the answer is no, engagement becomes irrational. Attention is finite. Spending it on enemies and critics is like handing your compass to the wind and hoping to stay on course. This is where many people get trapped. They believe ignoring critics means weakness, that silence concedes ground, that unanswered attacks somehow count as losses. But in reality, reacting is what grants legitimacy. It signals that the criticism reached you, affected you, altered your state. Silence does the opposite. It removes oxygen. Epictetus stated this with brutal clarity. It's not what happens to you, but how you react. The insult, the attack, the judgment itself is neutral. It only gains power when your reaction gives it meaning. Ignoring is not denial of reality. It is the refusal to assign value where none exists. When you stop responding to enemies and critics, something predictable happens. At first, they escalate. Louder words, sharper tones, repeated attempts. This phase confuses people. They think the escalation means ignoring is failing. In truth, it means the opposite. The behavior is a last attempt to regain access. When it fails, the energy collapses. Without reaction, enemies become shadows present somewhere, but unable to touch you. And as they fade, something else sharpens. Your focus. Every moment you don't spend engaging with noise returns to purpose. You think more clearly. You act more deliberately. You stop carrying the emotional residue of pointless conflicts. The Stoics understood that inner clarity cannot coexist with constant reaction. One dissolves the other. This does not mean you ignore everything indiscriminately. Stoicism is not avoidance masquerading as wisdom. There are moments when response is required, when justice, responsibility, or virtue demand action. Strategic silence does not eliminate confrontation. It filters it. You choose your battles the way a disciplined mind chooses thoughts. Carefully, sparingly, without ego. The danger lies in reacting automatically, in feeling compelled to correct every falsehood, answer every provocation, defend against every imagined threat. This impulse feels righteous, but it is rooted in insecurity. It assumes that silence equals defeat. Stoicism dismantles that assumption completely. Silence, when chosen, is dominance over oneself. This is why this principle is where most people fail. They understand silence with friends. They practice withdrawal with strangers. But critics trigger identity. Enemies provoke pride. Ignoring them feels like letting something slide. And yet, this is exactly where Stoic discipline matters most. If you can ignore praise but not criticism, you are still controlled. If you can withdraw from indifference but not hostility, your freedom is incomplete. Ignoring critics is not about appearing superior. It is about refusing to be recruited into battles that do not serve your direction. You are not here to manage the opinions of people committed to misunderstanding you. You are here to act in alignment with your purpose. When you remove enemies and critics from your attention, they do not disappear from the world, but they disappear from your inner life. And once that happens, they lose all leverage. They may continue speaking. You continue moving. They remain noise. You remain trajectory. This is the discipline most people avoid. And it is precisely why mastering it changes everything. If you're already picturing one specific person who falls into one of these categories and realizing you've been giving them way too much of your energy, drop a quick comment with, "They get nothing," to mark the decision. Next, we go inside. How to train yourself to feel nothing when the provocation hits. Principle 5. The discipline of indifference. Training to feel nothing. Understanding who deserves your silence is one thing. Actually staying silent when the insult lands, when the disrespect burns, when your ego screams for you to fire back, that is where almost everyone breaks. The body reacts before the mind can decide. Heart rate spikes, jaw tightens, adrenaline floods the system. Every instinct tells you, defend, attack, prove them wrong, make them feel it. This is the moment weak people lose. They know the philosophy, they've read the quotes, but they cannot control the feeling, so the feeling controls them. The Stoics called the solution apatheia, not apathy in the modern sense of laziness or depression, but a disciplined state of being undisturbed by externals. It is the ability to let emotions rise and then let them pass through without action. Marcus Aurelius described the training perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't mean you stop feeling the sting. He meant the sting no longer owns you. Here's how the training actually works in daily life. Start small, very small. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Instead of cursing, honking, or replaying it for the next 10 minutes, you notice the anger rise and you let it pass. You breathe once, deeply, and keep driving. A coworker makes a passive-aggressive comment in a meeting. The old you would have clapped back with something sharp or spent the rest of the day stewing. Now, you pause. You feel the heat in your chest. You notice it like you're watching weather move across the sky. Then you return to the agenda. No comment, no facial change, no follow-up email. A family member brings up that old sore subject again. You feel the familiar tightness in your throat. Instead of explaining yourself for the 100th time, you simply say, "Noted," or "nothing at all," and change the subject or leave the room if needed. Each time you do this, you are forging a new reflex. At first, it feels unnatural, even impossible. Your nervous system is used to reacting, but repetition rewires it. The pause between stimulus and response gets longer. The emotion peaks lower and fades faster. Eventually, indifference becomes the default. This is not suppression. Suppression buries the feeling. It festers and explodes later. Indifference observes the feeling, lets it exist, and then lets it go without feeding it attention or action. Epictetus gave the practical rule: first, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Decide in advance who you are, a person who is not moved by petty provocations. Then, when the moment arrives, act like that person. The payoff is freedom most people never taste. You can be insulted and feel only mild curiosity instead of rage. You can be betrayed and remove the person from your life without drama or revenge. You can be criticized publicly and keep working on your mission as if nothing happened. You become untouchable not because nothing touches you, but because nothing sticks. The man who has mastered indifference cannot be manipulated. You cannot bait him. You cannot guilt him. You cannot provoke him into giving away his power. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you add another layer of armor. Every time you let the storm pass without joining it, you become more sovereign. If you've already caught yourself this week about to react to something small and managed to stop, drop a quick comment with indifference rising to lock in the win. Next, we look at the bigger picture, how this discipline turns everyday interactions into a game you control without ever moving a piece. Principle 6. Power dynamics and social chess. Controlling without moving. Most people think power comes from action, from saying the right thing at the right time, from asserting, correcting, responding, making moves. So they play every situation impulsively. They react to pressure. They answer provocation. They try to regain control by doing more. And over time, they become exhausted not because they are weak, but because they are constantly moving. Stoic psychology approaches power like a game of chess played at a higher level. The strongest player is not the one who moves the most pieces. It is the one who forces the other side to move. Control does not come from motion. It comes from restraint. When you react immediately, you reveal your priorities. You show what matters to you, what unsettles you, what pulls you out of position. This information is valuable. And every time you give it away through impulsive reaction, you weaken your stance. Ignoring, by contrast, withholds information. It creates uncertainty. And uncertainty shifts the dynamic. This is why indifference is so destabilizing in social and professional environments. When you stop reacting, the other person is forced to fill the silence. They over-explain. They escalate. They chase confirmation. The balance of effort reverses. You are no longer working to manage the interaction. They are. Seneca captured this principle precisely when he wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay is not hesitation. It is strategy. By delaying response or withholding it entirely, you prevent emotion from dictating your move. You keep the board intact while the other side reveals their hand. In relationships, this looks like refusing to argue on demand. You do not rush to fix tension that was created impulsively. You allow space. The person who needs reassurance or control feels the imbalance and must either regulate themselves or expose their dependency. In business, it appears as not reacting to pressure tactics, artificial urgency, or emotional negotiation. Silence forces the other side to negotiate with themselves. In social hierarchies, it manifests as calm detachment. You do not compete for attention. You do not chase relevance. Your lack of movement creates presence. The outcome is consistent. Those who are reactive burn energy. Those who are indifferent conserve it. and energy conserved compounds into authority. This does not mean you never act. It means you act from position, not provocation. You move when it benefits you, not when someone else demands it. Indifference becomes a filter. Anything that requires impulsive reaction to maintain control is not worth engaging with. Anything that survives silence is worth attention. There is a crucial warning here. This is not cynicism. Stoic indifference is not detachment from humanity or care. It is realism. It recognizes that most social games are driven by emotion, not necessity. By refusing to play impulsively, you step outside the game without becoming hostile to it. Cynicism assumes everyone is an enemy. Stoicism assumes clarity is rare. You do not ignore because you disdain others. You ignore because you understand dynamics. You see that control often comes from the one who can wait, who can remain still, who can let the situation reveal itself without interference. When you master this, something changes in how others treat you. Pressure tactics lose effectiveness. Emotional bait stops working. People either rise to your level of calm or remove themselves. Both outcomes serve you. You are no longer scrambling across the board. You are choosing when to move. And in social chess, that is how power is held without effort. Principle 7. The danger of caring too much. Breaking the chain of validation. Most people believe caring is a virtue. They are taught that paying attention to opinions makes them open-minded, that seeking approval makes them likable, that being affected by reactions means they are engaged with the world. What they are rarely told is that excessive caring quietly turns into a chain. The more you care about how others see you, the more your behavior bends around their expectations. And without realizing it, you become governed by moods, praise, criticism, and signals that were never meant to guide your life. This is where power truly leaks. When you care too much, you do not need enemies. Every opinion becomes a lever. Every raised eyebrow feels like a verdict. Every moment of silence from others creates anxiety. You begin adjusting yourself preemptively, explaining before being asked, softening before being attacked, performing before anyone demanded it. This is not empathy. It is submission to external validation. Stoic psychology names this problem precisely. It is not the world that disturbs you, but the value you assign to it. Epictetus stated it plainly. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Caring too much is simply a habit of interpretation. You decide that opinions matter. You decide that reactions define you. And once those decisions harden, freedom disappears. Breaking this chain requires something uncomfortable. Internal validation. Not affirmations, not confidence performances, but the quiet discipline of deciding that your worth does not fluctuate with response. This is not indifference to people. It is indifference to judgment. You stop outsourcing your self-assessment to the crowd. When you withdraw your need for validation, something counterintuitive happens. The world does not collapse. Relationships do not automatically end. In fact, many improve. Without the pressure to please, your interactions become cleaner. You speak less defensively. You listen without anxiety. You act without rehearsing how it will be received. And those who relied on your approval-seeking feel the shift immediately. Some will push harder. Praise becomes conditional. Criticism sharpens. Silence is used as leverage. This is the test. If you break here, the chain tightens again. If you hold, the dynamic resets. People either meet you at your level of self-possession or remove themselves. Both outcomes are clarifying. The reward is real freedom. When you no longer need praise, it loses power. When you no longer fear criticism, it becomes information instead of injury. You are no longer bribed by approval or threatened by disapproval. You move from being managed to being self-directed. There is an important caution. Breaking the habit of caring too much does not happen overnight. This is not a switch, it is a weakening. Each time you notice the urge to seek validation and choose not to act on it, the chain loosens. Each time you allow misunderstanding to exist without correcting it, strength accumulates. Each time you let silence stand where explanation once lived, autonomy grows. This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional maturity. You still care where it is meaningful. You simply stop caring where it costs you yourself. When this principle settles, a final transformation occurs. You become difficult to manipulate because there is nothing obvious to grab. No hunger for approval. No reflex to defend. No panic when ignored. You remain steady, regardless of response. And in a world driven by reaction, this steadiness is rare. Stop caring too much, and something quiet takes its place. Clarity, direction, and a kind of freedom that cannot be taken away. You no longer bleed power the way you used to. That was the quiet promise at the beginning of this journey. And now you can see why. Silence was never emptiness. It was the first act of strength. You learned that reacting hands control a way, that being ignored unsettles the mind that seeks feedback, that withdrawal can happen without disappearance, that not every enemy or critic deserves acknowledgement, that indifference can be trained, that power shifts to the one who waits, and that caring too much is the most invisible chain of all. None of these principles required performance. None demanded confrontation. Each one asked for presence, restraint, and subtraction. Less reaction, less explanation, less need to be seen. And in that reduction, something solid emerged. This is where Stoicism ties it all together. The Stoics understood that ignoring is not cruelty, and it is not avoidance. It is sovereignty. It is the refusal to let the external world vote on your inner order. You do not ignore because you are above others. You ignore because you are responsible for yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Ignoring, at its core, is about protecting that quality. It is deciding which thoughts enter, which voices matter, and which disturbances are allowed to pass without residence. The Stoic does not waste mental energy policing the world. He governs the mind. What you practiced here was not detachment from life, but alignment with it. You learned to stay present without being penetrated, to move through noise without absorbing it, to engage where it matters and withdraw where it doesn't. This is not passive. It is precise, and precision is what turns restraint into power. So let this be the final takeaway. Stop caring too much. Stop feeding what drains you. Stop explaining yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. When you remove unnecessary reactions, you don't become empty, you become solid. You don't disappear, you stabilize. You don't lose influence, you concentrate it. This is how you become untouchable. Not by hardening your heart, but by mastering your attention. Your reign does not begin with domination. It begins with self-command. If this message ignited something in you, mark the moment. Come on, I am untouchable. Like this video if you choose restraint over reaction. Subscribe if you are committed to governing yourself instead of negotiating with noise. And share this with someone who reacts too quickly and wonders why they feel so drained. Go forward lighter. Go forward clearer. And master the art of ignoring, not to escape the world, but to stand firmly within it.